Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. You've heard about the guy who got stuck in a cave upside down, Nutty Putty Cave. What's the scariest situation that you have ever found yourself in? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
When I was a kid, I was sitting in the bed of a truck to weigh down some plywood or something similar, and wind got under it and threw me over the side of the truck. I was barely hanging on the side of the truck while going around 40 miles per hour. Luckily, my pop saw me in the side mirror and stopped before I fell to the road. The 80s were truly a different time. I went hunting with some family when I was 11. Out in the middle of the Arizona desert, my uncle tells us kids to go flush out the deer from a ravine. We head down, and along the way, I got separated from my two cousins. Suddenly, my ankle has a stabbing pain. Can't put weight on it, and I have to climb down a small hill, 10 feet, to where I think my cousins are. Get to the bottom, and pain is worse. I yell and cry, no one answers. With no idea what to do, I sit and pull off my boot or sock. There's a tiny black nub of something in my ankle. Pull out a Leatherman I had no real business having, but it was cool, and gave it a tug. Excruciating pain rockets up my leg. Still, I was stuck. I knew how to get to camp, but no idea where anyone is. Also, I can't currently walk, so I start pulling. After 10 or so minutes, I finally pull out a prickly pear needle about 4 inches long. The nub was maybe a quarter inch sticking out. Why did it take 10 minutes? They're barbed. With no more pain, I walked a little down the ravine and found my cousins. They should have been able to hear me, as they weren't far away. Something similar. I went scuba diving in St. Thomas. My ex was ill, so I went solo. And when I got on the boat, the dive master said he'd be my dive buddy, the person who pairs up with you so you can help each other if there's a problem. So off we go, about 15 to 20 of us. We were going to go into a shipwreck, what's known in diving as an overhead environment, as you can't go directly to the surface. I'm looking around at the ship when all of a sudden the DM darts off in the gloom, and I'm alone. I start to follow him when suddenly I'm stopped. I try to wriggle free, but then I realize my equipment is tangled up with the wreck. Scariest moment of my life. In a single flash, I saw it. I couldn't free myself. The DM's forgotten about me. No one will notice for hours until my ex wonders where I am. I'm going to suffocate or drown down here alone. My blood was like ice. Then, all the training you have to do before they let you in the water kicked in. I calmly removed my gear, disentangled it, put it back on, and caught up with the group as they were leaving the wreck. I didn't leave a tip though.
Didn't get a tip. That should be the least of it. You shouldn't have a job after something like that. Glad your training kicked in. You were all right.
At a fair, the ride I was in didn't have a proper seatbelt, and it got stuck upside down. Because I was small, their minimum height bar was not accurate. I almost fell out of the seat. It was one of those rides that went in a circle going upside down and something hanging there. There was just a big bar over your lap with a big gap. When we got stuck while upside down, the other kids were big enough to do a handstand on the ceiling without their butts leaving the seat area. But I couldn't do that, as I would fall out if I had to reach for the ceiling. I gripped this random vertical metal bar for dear life while we hung there for like 20 to 30 minutes. I had a death grip on the thing. Thought I was going to die, and people laughed at me crying. My sister tried to get me to do the handstand and didn't listen when I tried to explain I was too short. When I was 8, I used to spend a lot of time at my grandparents' farm. A totally normal thing. All the grandkids did was climb and jump around on those big round hay bales. That winter, I was off doing my own thing, just me and the farm dogs. I was climbing across a huge group of bales, having some kind of epic adventure. It had just snowed, and my 8-year-old brain assumed that the snow between the bales was packed down and could support my weight. When I stepped on it, I went straight down. So now I was stuck between two bales in the middle of a field of probably 100. The dogs were freaking out, trying to pull the sleeves on my jacket as I tried to reach up, but I was so short I couldn't actually reach up to the top of the bale. I was stuck in there for hours. I sobbed to myself while imagining how no one would find me until the spring when Grandpa moved the bales to feed the cattle, when he'd find my bones. I eventually wiggled my way free and sobbed all the way back to the farmhouse, where Mom and Grandma comforted me while they picked the clumps of ice and snow out of my hair. The adults eventually would have realized I was missing, and the dogs would have eventually led them to where I was. Our farm dogs were hella smart, but that's another thread. But to my kid brain, that was how I was gonna die, trapped between two bales of hay because I was an idiot. No wonder I'm claustrophobic, lol. I would have been perhaps 16 years old when I had the opportunity to go to my first concert, Stevie Wonder. I was staying with a friend out of town. We got dropped off in the pouring rain but thought nothing of this and arranged to be picked up after the concert. The rain got worse, and the concert was canceled, so we were just going to have to wait for our ride. A couple of guys wound down their car window and asked if we wanted to get in and smoke some pot. My friend said no, but I was at that age where I thought anyone who smoked pot must be a good person. I jumped in the middle of the bench seat in the front. My friend refused to get in the car. Off we did go. Not for a second did I think I was in any danger. They drove to a park and lit up. This joint was like no other I had ever smoked, or maybe it was just my now heightened anxiety realizing the position I'd put myself in. I was sitting between these two guys, and I swear I saw their faces changed. I realized in that moment that I had to get out now. Don't ask me how, but somehow I managed to climb out of that car and run like I'd never run before. They chased me in the car. Somehow, I noticed an elderly couple getting in their car outside a restaurant. I raced up to these poor people and jumped inside the back seat of their car before begging them to take me back to where the concert was meant to be held. They did. I would go on to put myself into many precarious situations, but this one stays with me.
Well, obviously, the lesson here is obvious. Don't get into a car with strangers, almost at any age. But glad you made it out okay.
Turned right in an old car. Hydroplaned all the way across the road. Road was 2 lanes on the right side. I was in the leftmost lane turning right. When I hydroplaned, I went all the way into the second lane on the left side. I was close enough to hitting another car that I could see in through their windshield screaming. Somehow, the car was turning so hard that we performed a full 180 and started skidding back into the right lanes. Luckily, no traffic was coming from that direction, but beyond the right lane shoulder was a bit of an embankment. Wouldn't have died if we fell off, probably, but there would have been serious injuries. However, we stopped skidding right on the shoulder, facing the wrong way, in traffic. I was probably 20 or something. Me and a few friends were at the Jersey Shore. We had a boogie board, and we're all, about 4 of us, were holding on to it. Think of a flower, but the people are the petals and the board is the center. We were just vibing, and we hadn't realized just how far we were carried away. A friend and I managed to push 2 of the people back to get carried back to the shore. My friend was a stronger swimmer than I was, and he managed to make it back to shore. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make it past the dead zone. Eventually I said F it and just calmed down and focused on floating until the lifeguards rowed out to me. I made it back. We were yelled at and banned from the water for the day by the guards, as we should have. But that moment when I realized I wasn't going anywhere, no matter how hard I swam, was terrifying. Now if my feet don't touch the floor, I back up immediately. Was on a whitewater canoeing trip in Canada. I was the last canoe in the order, and after rescuing another canoe, hit a corner in the river. I have paddled quite a bit in my life, but the person in the front did not. In this corner was a log jam that we could have avoided. My partner in the front panicked, and we hit the log jam, turned sideways, and started to take on water. If you go under one of these, referred to as strainers, the force of the moving water on the logs underneath will pin you. Pretty well guaranteed death. As the canoe took on more water, I made the decision to get on the log jam and see if I could bail and pry the canoe clear. First log held, but the second log snapped. I fell through and caught myself on a log at chest height. The water was ripping below the log surface. I still remember the feeling of it today. Managed to compose myself, get up, bail the canoe, and pry us out. My friend lost his paddle, so the last of the rapids were just myself, as he was still in shock. but we made it. I was vacationing in Acapulco for a week with my best friend and his wife in 1979. I had just gotten divorced and they decided I needed to get away. The day after we arrived, we were hanging on the beach in front of our hotel and I decided to swim. I was a decent swimmer out to the rock in the middle of the bay. I got close and tried to climb on it but got pushed away by the waves. Tried a few more times and lifted my hand out of the water and it's covered in blood. I'm confused but quickly realized that the rock is covered in barnacles just below the surface that have shredded my hands. I try to remain calm and turn to swim back and realize just how far away I am from shore. I have my hands clenched into fists to try and stop the bleeding, which makes it that much harder to swim. I'm also freaking out because we've heard about some shark sightings the day before. It took me forever to reach the beach, positive that I was leaving a trail of blood in the water and was going to be attacked by sharks at any moment. I walk up to my friends sunbathing and tell them I had a little accident. My friend's wife shades her eyes and looks up at me, and I show her my hands, blood running down my forearms. She jumps up and starts screaming. I look down at the sands and I'm standing in a pool of blood. I didn't realize that I'd also shredded my feet on the barnacles. My friends quickly got me back to our hotel and found a doctor. They get me to our hotel room and into the tub where he proceeds to scrub my shredded skin to remove the dirt and debris. He bandages up my hands and feet, gives me a shot and a prescription for tetracycline, which my friends got filled for me. I spent the next few days just in and out of sleep on the hotel bed, with my best friend helping me to the bathroom and his wife bringing me food. Not the vacation they imagined. I kept apologizing, and not the opportunities to meet hot vacationing women I imagined. After a few days, I'm able to walk. The bandages have been changed a few times and are now less bulky. I can get my sandals on and each finger is taped up separately. First time out of the room in days. I meet my friends downstairs for breakfast. The current news of the day: a swimmer staying 2 hotels down from ours was killed by a shark that morning, and her husband had been severely injured and was being airlifted out. Beach is closed to swimmers. A very memorable trip. Stuck in a building that's on fire while a gunfight was going on outside. I was on a base in Afghanistan as a contractor. It wasn't a big base like Bagram, but a small PRT base. I was chilling in my room when a huge boom knocked me to the ground. A VBIED had been set off outside one of the walls. Shortly after, I start hearing gunshots, so I hit the ground and throw on my vest and helmet. Taliban exchanging gunfire with the army and this company called the Olive Group. This building wasn't fortified. It was entirely made out of wood and burned quickly. As the place got hotter and the air thicker with smoke, I decided to crawl out. Still hearing gunshots, I slowly pushed open the door for a soldier to swing around and point his rifle in my face. He then yelled, "Friendly!" and grabbed the back of my vest to help me to my feet and help me get away to safety. Had to be flown out with a couple of others on medevac. Spent some time at a hospital in Dubai getting treated for smoke inhalation. Then I just went back to work like 2 weeks later. Throwaway, because my wife knows about my main account and I don't need this story giving her any more nightmares than she already has. This happened to me and my buddy back in the late 80s. Shortly after we move into a 2-bedroom apartment together, he approaches me asking for a favor. Turns out he'd been having some sleep paralysis episodes around the same time every night and asked if I could check on him at exactly 3 a.m. Kind of a strange request from someone I didn't know well at all at the time, but of course I agreed. 3 a.m. rolls around, so I go and check on him. Right away I can see something's not right. He isn't moving, but the poor bastard's face looks absolutely horrified. So I do as he'd asked, turn on the lights, just talk to him normally, a one-sided conversation obviously, as if nothing strange is going on. He still seems so afraid, so I decide to keep things light. Maybe not the best idea, but I said something to the effect of, "Everything's cool, man, you're fine, I'm not gonna hurt you, and you ain't no monsters here gonna hurt you either, right monsters?" Obviously, I meant for the ensuing silence to be comforting, except something broke the silence. I heard in a very low, quiet voice that seemed to come from directly above my buddy's bed the single word, "wrong." Of course, my heart started racing. and my first instinct was to get the hell out of there. But my poor buddy heard the same voice I did coming from the right above him and couldn't even move. I immediately turned on his boombox. Anyone remember those? And acted as if I hadn't heard it, but I'm a piss poor actor. After what felt like an eternity, he eventually fell back asleep, and I booked it back to my room. I jumped on the first excuse to move out a few months later. Still not over it.
It'd be interesting to see sleep paralysis from the perspective that you saw it in. Hearing that voice would definitely freak me out too, I guess, as someone who's agnostic in the thought, but yeah, move out.
I secretly snuck into my neighbor's pool one summer while they were out of town for a funeral. They had this giant bubble wrap thing on top to protect debris and the like. Well, it got moved to the middle mostly, so there was a sliver of open water to enter the pool, the bubble wrap thing, and a little bit larger patch of open water on the other side. I thought I could swim underneath and make it to the other side, swim back to the ladder, get out, and go home with a personal pride in tow. I made it halfway and tried to come up for air. I couldn't lift the effing bubble wrap to breathe. I started inhaling the water from my frenzied little splashes when trying to prop it for air. With my vision fading and my body buzzing, coupled with the lethargy of oxygen deprivation, I thought of my dogs and the puppies they just had. I had to make it home to the puppies. I swam with every bit of adrenaline-fueled survival strength and made it back to the ladder, climbed out, and trudged across the 2 backyards to mine. Sat on the patio for a minute, saw the pups, and ran to my room when my stepdad came out to check the progress of his sun tea. Never told anyone until now. I always thought of how funny it would be for them to come home from the funeral to find the 12-year-old from a few houses down, all dead and bloated, surface when they removed the bubble wrap thing. They hated me because I was a hood rat and friends with their kid and had proposed from dusk till dawn when I stayed the night and they were renting a movie. They were diehard Christians. The Cheech Marin speech. My God, their faces when the Cheech Marin speech started?